Get out of here, I'll pay the $700 loan.
What? It's $2,000 a month though. I was taken aback by my sister-in-law's sudden loud voice and her words that were quite off the mark. However, during that time, she became even more hostile towards me.
I won't let my younger brother and his wife do whatever they want in this house anymore. From now on, my husband and I will be living in this house.
Saying that, my sister-in-law told me to leave the house. It seemed like she was doing the same thing to my husband as well, and was determined to drive us out.
Well, if that's what my sister says, let's leave.
My usually calm husband said that, so I decided to leave the house with him. Afterwards, my sister-in-law and her husband had an unexpected future waiting for them, but they only found out about what happened to them after we left, a month later. My name is Jessica. My husband and I both work. My sister-in-law attacked us and tried to drive us out of the house we lived in. The first trigger of the incident was that my husband and I decided to live with my parents-in-law. At that time, Lisa, my sister-in-law, wasn't in the US accompanying her husband who was on an overseas assignment. During that time, my parents-in-law asked us to live together with them in their house where they lived. I was surprised. What? We're going to live together?
We're already old, aren't we? If we live alone at our age, we don't know what might happen. So I think it's better for us to live together with our son and daughter-in-law.
We were asked to come to their house suddenly, and when we arrived, we were told that they wanted us to live together with them. Neither my husband Michael nor I could have expected this. Originally, Michael and I met on a matchmaking app. Even if you meet someone on such an app, there are various patterns such as not contacting each other after meeting once, or losing contact while keeping in touch. However, even in such a situation, Michael exchanged emails with me many times and we became closer by going out to eat together many times. When I was thinking, I like him, it seems that Michael was thinking the same thing as me. After 2 years of dating, Michael and I decided to get married. Our parents, both mine and Michael's, were very happy about our marriage, as we are close in age. Someone was not sure whether the person was happy or not about our marriage. The person was Lisa, who is my sister-in-law. She is Michael's real sister and is 3 years older than him. At the time when our marriage was being discussed, she had already been married for a year. She was proud of the fact that she, as an older sister, got married before her younger brother Michael.
I can't believe Michael can get married. Compared to me, an elite, Michael, who is just an ordinary person, is worthless. But well, it's good that he got married, isn't it? The partner seems to be just an ordinary woman who is far inferior to me.
She threw a wet blanket on Michael, who was in a happy mood about the marriage, with such words. I was surprised too. Even after that, Lisa continued to make fun of me and Michael.
My husband is going on an overseas assignment. He's a rising star. I'm fluent in French too, so of course I'm going to follow my husband on his overseas assignment. Well, I don't think Michael and his wife, who are just ordinary people, can imagine our brilliant life.
I didn't feel angry, perhaps because her way of making fun of me and Michael was too childish. It's not that I'm generous, but rather, she, who dismisses us as insignificant, was the one who was insignificant to me. Michael seemed to be used to Lisa's behavior and had the same smile as always. I also thought that if Michael wasn't angry, I wouldn't react and wouldn't say anything back to Lisa. It must have been commonplace for Lisa to continue to make fun of her younger brother without saying anything, but it seemed to bother her that I didn't react either. Lisa asked me,
Jessica, are you really okay with Michael as your partner? Although I'm older than him, he is just an ordinary person who is not as good as a woman like me.
No, Michael is a special person to me. I answered like this because I loved Michael myself, but Lisa didn't seem to be satisfied with my answer.
But isn't a woman's happiness to marry a man with a high value and be supported by him? Just being in a high position makes you feel great, doesn't it?
Certainly, there are people who think that it is a good thing to marry a husband who earns a lot of money and be supported by him. However, I am not a person who thinks such things, so I tilted my head and answered, I don't think so. With that answer, Lisa seemed to think of me as someone who was incompatible with her, a loser who couldn't agree with her own sensibility.
Well, since you're going to marry Michael, you're just an ordinary type, aren't you? Both of you will have an unhappy life without creating anything from now on. But there are many people in the world who have no choice but to live such a life, so don't rot and do your best.
I thought it was terrible to say such things to the two of us who were about to get married and be happy. Michael seemed to be used to Lisa's behavior and had the same calm demeanor as always. Watching him, I thought that I didn't even get angry about what Lisa said to me, and I was able to calm down. A while after we got married, Lisa and her husband went overseas. However, our parents-in-law, who had been living with Lisa and her husband until then, suddenly became lonely when the two of them were gone, and asked us to live with us this time. We had no reason to refuse, so we started living together with my parents-in-law under the condition that they would live with us until my sister-in-law and her husband returned from overseas. And then, what do you think happened? Lisa's husband's assignment period was extended, and before we knew it, Michael and I had been living with our parents-in-law for 10 years. During those 10 years, I also became pregnant and gave birth to a healthy baby boy. However, there was one thing that worried me. It was the aging of my parents-in-law's house. My son, who was very lively like a boy, often ran around the house, so I was always worried that the pillars might break if he hit them. However, my parents-in-law didn't say anything about it. That's only natural. Even if my parents-in-law were worried about the old age of the house, they didn't have the money to do anything about it. So Michael and I talked and decided to build a new house. We demolished the old parents-in-law's house and built a new one. If it's a new house, there's no need to worry about aging, and even if my son is lively, I don't have to worry about the house breaking. When Michael and I talked about demolishing my parents-in-law's house and building a new one, my parents-in-law were very happy. At that time, Michael and I also understood why my parents-in-law wanted to live with us. However, since there were no significant obstacles, Michael and I left my parents-in-law as they were. Then we demolished the old, aging building and built our new house. We weren't rich enough to pay for it all at once, so Michael and I took out a loan and paid $2,000 a month. I thought we would ask my parents-in-law for money too.
Dad, Mom, about the loan for the house. How about $700 a month?
My parents-in-law were surprised.
Why do we have to pay? Isn't this the house that Jessica and Michael built? We're just living here, so why do we have to pay?
They refused to pay anything. I thought that my mother-in-law and father-in-law were working, so Michael and I thought that they might pay $700 a month, although it might be a little too much. Even if it didn't work out, they should at least contribute $350. That's what we thought, but our thoughts were quickly overturned. My father-in-law and mother-in-law insisted that we built the house on our own and refused to pay any money. Since there was no point in arguing, Michael and I decided to manage the monthly loan repayment somehow. And then, one day, Lisa, who had heard a rumor that we were living in a new house, contacted me.
Hey, Jessica. I heard that you're living with my parents after we went overseas. Is that true?
Yes, that's right. They said they were lonely because you and your husband suddenly disappeared after living together until now.
That's a lie.
Even though I was only telling the truth, she suddenly said that my words were a lie, and I was confused. What do you mean by a lie?
But you and Michael are ordinary people. There's no way my father and mother would live with you. My father and mother relied on us elites.
Lisa keeps saying elite, but I heard that when she went overseas, she quit her job and became a housewife, following her husband's overseas assignment. I have no idea what she means by elite.
You're caught in the act and can't say anything, can you?
I could only smile wryly. Lisa was wrong about everything, but I didn't know what to say to her because she was so confident.
Oh, by the way, my husband and I are going back to the US next month.
Oh, are you going back for a visit? I'll let your father and mother know. I replied. Since they were assigned overseas, my sister-in-law and her husband had not visited their parents' home very often. Even after they returned to the US, they only visited their parents' home a few times. If my sister-in-law came to visit, I'm sure my parents-in-law would be happy.
No. We're not going back for a visit. From now on, my husband and I will be living in that house.
What? I was surprised.
You guys are no longer needed.
My sister-in-law's words left me stunned. Lisa's announcement that she would be moving into her parents' home meant that her husband's overseas assignment had ended. Initially, Michael, our son, and I had planned to move out at this point. However, the loan was a concern. From now on, Lisa and her husband will be paying the $2,000 monthly mortgage instead of us. However, Lisa's husband is an elite who has been entrusted with an overseas assignment, and Lisa herself calls herself an elite, so there is no reason why they cannot pay what we could afford. Thinking this, I closed my mouth. I see. I hung up the phone. Lisa didn't say anything else after telling that she was leaving. Since there are things to consider from now on, I immediately told Michael about the contents of Lisa's contact. While I was talking while my son was at school, my parents-in-law with selective hearing overheard the words, "Lisa is coming home," and came to the living room with a smile.
I'm glad. Lisa and her husband are finally coming home. This will put an end to our uneasy life.
Until now, we had been paying off the loan, but in return, Michael and I had been receiving electricity and food expenses from my parents-in-law. Since we lived together, I thought it was unfair for only one party to bear the expenses. However, my mother-in-law and father-in-law had been concerned about that. The two of them seemed to have the idea that
Making us pay for living expenses? It's obvious that Michael and Jessica don't earn enough.
before we lived together, Lisa and her husband, who lived with my parents-in-law, never asked them for money, and they compared us to Lisa and her husband. It seems that they thought that we were okay to live with, but if Lisa and her family were coming back, we were not needed. Michael and I had started preparing to move out, as we had thought that our living together with my parents-in-law was limited until Lisa and her husband returned. From now on, Lisa and her husband can take care of the loan repayment. However, Since we were suddenly told that they would be returning, it was difficult to find a good place to move out to. While we were busy with all of this, Lisa and her husband returned.
What happened to that old house?
She immediately turned to me.
Oh, you're still here? Don't be so presumptuous as to stay in this house forever. Ordinary people should live in ordinary places. Here, I'll pay the $700 mortgage, so get out.
I thought, what? It's $2,000 a month, but I soon realized that Lisa had heard about the $700 from my parents-in-law. When Michael and I asked my parents-in-law for help with the loan repayment, we talked about a monthly amount of $700. We thought we would pay our living expenses if they paid that amount, but in the end, my parents-in-law did not pay the $700, so we decided to have them pay our living expenses. Michael and I did not want to burden one side, even if it was family. In any case, I understood that Lisa had misunderstood the situation.
I won't let the two of you do whatever you want in this house anymore. From now on, my husband and I will live in this house.
She raised her voice even more and was determined to kick Michael and me out of the house. After reporting what Lisa had said to Michael when he came home from work that day.
Well, if my sister says so, let's move out.
I agreed with him. After all, even without Lisa's urging, Michael, our son, and I had planned to move out of this house. However, there are things we need to do before we leave.
Since there is still a loan repayment left, we'll leave it to you from now on.
Michael said as he handed over the documents related to the house's loan repayment.
Yes, it's just the monthly repayment, right? We can handle it with ease.
Lisa and her husband said, readily accepting the responsibility of repaying the loan from now on. Michael and I can now leave the house with peace of mind. We thought it would be better if the period of living together was short from the beginning, and above all, we didn't want to live with my parents-in-law, who have a little bit of an impolite side, because we thought our son would be going through a sensitive time from now on. On the day Michael, our son, and I moved out.
You're finally leaving, huh? I heard from Mom and Dad. You've been getting your living expenses from them until now? Even though you're a couple with a child, how can you survive with that? You don't have any money, but you're raising a child?
She said a lot of, but we were too busy moving to listen to her words. We didn't have time to listen. Well, Lisa saw that we were too busy moving and not listening to her words.
How dare you?
But despite all that, we were able to move into our new home. My parents-in-law were in a celebratory mood every day, as if they were very happy that Lisa and her husband had returned, and they didn't seem to be interested in our move. Lisa, on the other hand, seemed to feel that if we left quickly, nothing else mattered, so we didn't tell my parents-in-law or sister-in-law where we were moving. Thanks to that, we were able to prevent my parents-in-law and sister-in-law from barging into our new home. This was because, 1 month after we left my parents-in-law's house, Lisa called us many times. Lisa called me in a panic because she realized that she had misunderstood the loan repayment amount.
What's going on? $2,000 a month? That's not right. And what does it mean that my parents don't have any money?
It's true that Lisa had initially misunderstood the amount we were paying each month as $700. However, I thought that Lisa's husband had signed the documents after carefully checking and correcting the misunderstanding when we handed over the loan repayment and ownership documents to him. I don't think anyone would be lazy enough to skip reading the text written in the documents related to the house they are going to live in. What? It was written in the documents, right? The monthly loan repayment for that house was set at $2,000.
What? $2,000 all of a sudden?
My sister-in-law exclaimed. I thought you and your husband were elites with good salaries, so I didn't think it was necessary to explain everything in detail. I said honestly. Lisa's voice on the other end of the phone sounded like a mosquito's buzz.
No work. I'm not working, and neither is my husband. He messed up while he was overseas and came back with a lower salary than before.
When we were being kicked out from my parents-in-law's house, they had an attitude that they were in a superior position to us, but I was surprised that they couldn't even pay the amount of the monthly repayment we were making. Lisa also said something else that caught my attention. So, your parents don't have any money?
Well, you guys were having my parents pay for your living expenses, right? That means my parents were supporting you.
Oh, I see. That's what you thought. Well, we were paying the entire loan repayment, so we thought we would have my father-in-law and mother-in-law cover our living expenses. But in reality, they didn't give us much money. They spend money on gambling every day.
Gambling?
Yes, gambling. I replied. It seems that my parents-in-law didn't gamble before we moved in with them. Since my parents-in-law only started gambling a few years ago, Lisa probably didn't know about it.
What? $2,000 a month, with no income. If I were counting on Mom and Dad's money, that's gone too. Hey, Jessica. Give me some money.
I shook my head. It seemed like she was in a desperate situation to ask for money from ordinary people like us, whom she had looked down on by calling us ordinary. However, I couldn't lend her any money. I have a son, and I'll need money for him from now on, so I can't help people outside my own home. I said and hung up the phone. It seems that Lisa and her husband, along with my parents-in-law, tried to visit my house after we moved out, but they ended up going to the wrong house and the police were called. It appears that Lisa has found a new job and is collecting money from her parents by working part-time and forbidding them from gambling. She is using this money to pay off the loan. It seems that the four of them work on side jobs during their days off, and the atmosphere in the house is terrible. It's unclear whether they will sell the house someday or miraculously finish paying off the loan, but we are enjoying our life without worrying about them. We are enjoying our days living together as a family of 3, while promising ourselves that we will not help Lisa's couple and my parents-in-law, no matter what happens in the future.
How was this story for you? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next video.